Hello, everyone, and welcome back into another Rooted podcast. Tim Strobel coming to you yet again from our Rooted podcast production studio out here in beautiful Denver, Colorado. Thanks again for listening, be it on iTunes, SoundCloud, or StayRooted.com. Don't forget to check out Rooted TV, by the way, our video platform that's been taken off over the past year. Have to shout out the guys over at Cannabis Club TV for continuing to push our show. We love producing it, and we have a great time producing it. So thanks for listening, and we hope that you get to listen to more episodes. So don't forget to check out Rooted TV at StayRooted.com or CannabisClub.tv. We've got some big news in the works that hopefully we'll be able to share with you soon. We're just waiting on a couple more things to line up. And lastly, a quick reminder to give us a review if you're listening to the show, which I'm assuming you are, because that's the only way you're hearing this, because reviews help us grow, and it's all about growing and growing. As for this show, let's talk about more growth and growing as we get set to welcome in our good buddy Patrick Rea, the co-founder and CEO of Canopy Boulder, one of the leading, if not the leading, cannabis industry accelerator in the space. Now, with the MJBiz conference, widely considered the largest cannabis trade show in the world right now, in our rear view mirror, I thought it'd be a great chance to get Patrick's take on the show. He's a thought leader in the industry and someone who speaks on a number of issues at these trade shows, so no one really has their finger on the pulse of a trade show more than he does. How is he seeing this industry grow before his eyes? What's new and exciting in the pipeline business-wise for Canopy Boulder? And if you don't know who Patrick is, by the way, or what Canopy Boulder does, go back about 9 months. I think March is when we last had Patrick on our show. It was episode 53, I believe. We break all that down for you, so we're not going to rehash too much of that in this show. We want to focus more on a couple of other things. You can also check them out at canopyboulder.com, of course, linked in the description of the podcast below. We're going to welcome in Patrick in just a minute. Before we do, a quick shout out to our sponsors, Green Bros, home of the world's premier dry harvesting solutions. And if you haven't heard, Green Bros just announced a partnership with a company called Purigen to bring you the box. Now, this thing is absolutely amazing. Originally developed for tissue sterilization for surgical implications, the box's remediation technology can eliminate mold or other microbial organisms in your harvest. It can bring harvest back to life, basically. It can also rehydrate your flower if it's become too dry, or even infuse terpenes into your flower, allowing you to create a one-of-a-kind flavor profile that is truly unique to your company. All using reactive oxygen technology, no harmful microwaves, no radiation that can drastically harm your flower. This thing's crazy. You got to see it to believe it, I say. Hit up Green Bros 844-379-8746 or info@greenbros.com for more information. All right, let's get to the meat of the podcast and welcome in our good buddy Patrick Rea, co-founder and CEO of Canopy Boulder. Patrick, welcome in, man. Just fresh off MJBiz. I know you got to speak out there. We talked briefly before you came on the show, but what was the show like for you out there?
You know, it was a Sunday to Saturday blitz. We had speaking engagements, multiple breakfasts, sometimes in the same day, and then a lot of meetings with investors, and then at MJBizCon, we had a booth as well. So we're sort of out there interacting with everyone that was in attendance at MJBizCon.
So I don't like to call myself a liar, but I guess I lied out of the gate. I want to give the listeners just a hint of information as reference. Canopy Boulder is a venture capital firm and business accelerator focused on investing into cannabis technology and infrastructure, all that stuff that supports the legal cannabis industry. Since its founding in 2013, Canopy has made well over 100 investments, making it the most active private investor in the cannabis industry. Patrick also sits on the selection committee for the ArcView Group, which we'll talk about, acted as executive editor for the third edition of ArcView's State of the Legal Marijuana Market Report, and has been a regular on CNBC's Power Pitch. Graduate from Brown University, so he knows what he's doing there. Education-wise, a really smart guy to pay attention to in the industry. Okay, again, you can go back to episode 53 if you want to learn more about Patrick and his entrepreneurial past. Patrick, you were a guest speaker at the show, like many of the shows you attend. Can you give me the topic of conversation for you at MJBiz?
Yeah, they asked me to come back and talk about fundraising for investors and entrepreneurs at their crash course. So it's the day for, I think it was Tuesday. It was Tuesday afternoon in the cycle, and then talked about that, and then sat on a panel of experts for Q&A to wrap up that day at MJBizCon.
I've heard a couple of people I've interviewed since the show, even at the show when we did the podcast with the Cannabis Club TV CEO Danny Keith and Greenbro CEO Colin Reichert. They were referring to it as the freshman class of cannabis. A lot of new people to the industry, really seeing a lot of this stuff for the first time. Is that the feeling you got from a lot of the people you talked to, or were you seeing a lot of old familiar faces as well?
Really a mix, but fewer and fewer of the veterans on the show floor as much. They're off usually having meetings privately, away from their trade show booths and their public presentations, because it just gets so crazy with so many new people coming to the industry. And I would say that, yes, the majority of the new attendees are new members of the cannabis industry. I think that's a great thing. Every day when someone makes the leap, has a conversation, buys a stock, makes an investment, starts a company, every day that happens, we come closer to the end of these horrible laws around cannabis.
And you yourself, Patrick, you're becoming one of the old hats in the industry. I mean, you've been around since 2012, 2013. Canopy founded in 2013. What sort of space are you seeing left in the industry? Is it still wide open, or are you seeing a lot of space?
Yeah, no, I say that I don't think the race has been run, and the winners have yet to be decided in this one. Much like the tech space or natural products, organic foods, there's opportunities, and there will be opportunities for entrepreneurs and investors for the next 30, 40 years. I mean, if we think that I think it's, for some entrepreneurs, if there are other people out there thinking that it's too late, that's even better for them. I mean, look at Google. It was not the first search engine, right? Whatever happened to Ask Jeeves, right? And Gopher, and those, you don't have to be first to win. It definitely gives you an opportunity, but how you seize that opportunity is a determinant factor on success and failure.
Patrick, when we talked back in March, we talked a lot about how the ancillary businesses are really where a lot of companies can grow and get big. Obviously, you have cultivators and dispensaries that can grow big brands, but these ancillary services, the technology and the supporting services that you guys work with at Canopy seem to be where the real... I don't want to say security is at, but where it's a little bit safer to make a play. Is that still the case almost towards the end of 2018?
What I'd say is that the ancillary sectors, they often require less capital to achieve similar valuations. So you don't have to go out and spend a lot of capital to buy lights and tables, or to secure a dispensary, a long-term lease, and redesign that. You also, in ancillary, you're not generally dealing with IRS Code 280E, which, if faithfully applied to a cannabis business, makes it very, very difficult for that business to turn a profit. And that being said, there's a lot of investment interest in the businesses that touch the plant right now because of all this capital coming in from Canada, and that's a really exciting thing. And I think that was. If I had a short list of things that people were talking about and thinking about in Las Vegas recently, that would be on it.
When you were out in Vegas, did you find yourself meeting with Canadian investors and Canadians that are trying to get into the U.S. market?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've realized what got them here won't get them there tomorrow, right? So this sort of race to liquidity in the public Canadian markets is a really great thing for the industry, in that it is bringing capital into a capital-starved space. Now, the Canadians have figured out ways to invest in U.S. businesses, and they also realize that the U.S. market will be so much larger than the Canadian market that they need to go and be here in the United States and be here in a big way, as the race towards and the march towards legalization continues in the United States.
For a company like Canopy Boulder, how important are these trade shows for you to be able to meet with potential investors, back to back to back to back without them having to come out to Canopy? It seems like it's pretty important for you guys.
Yeah. I believe firmly in in-person events. The way we consume information and communicate is, highly digital now, and the in-person events allow us to confirm those relationships in person. And I think that, these events are great. We'll always be going to them. And for the sole reason that most everybody's in the industry is there. So you can have that meeting with someone who works 3 blocks away that you don't see because you're so busy with the day-to-day when you're out of the office and freed up a bit to engage with people one-on-one.
Are you tired of the trade shows yet? Has it worn you down to where you don't want to go, or is that something that you love doing?
No, I love doing them, but I have a curious background in terms of operating B2B events, conferences, and trade shows. So, where some people say, oh, it's so exhausting, I say this is so energetic. It's so energizing to be in that environment. And if you do your work ahead of the event, you can make it highly valuable for you and your business. But if you don't do the pre-work and you go there and you hope that things will come together and you'll run into people and schedule a meeting, it doesn't happen. You have to work out 2 weeks, 3 weeks in advance with yourself and your team and your goals to make sure it's a good experience.
Is there a certain investor, Patrick, that you're looking for in terms of, past affiliation with investing in cannabis, or just a diversified portfolio? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I think there's not really a good profile of investors in the space. I mean, people in the cannabis industry come to the cannabis industry for all different reasons, whether it's economic opportunity, social reform, personal health experience, and sometimes all the above. So I think the important thing is to communicate with people and try to understand their motivations and their drive, and make sure that you're a good fit with them.
Going back to our conversation back in March of this year, one of the things you mentioned that still sticks out to me, and I bring it up when I talk to people about investing in the space, is how tough that conversation was for you early on and difficult in getting that. So now we have a number of states that have come on, medical or recreational. Canada's gone. A number of countries have legalized recreationally. That conversation has to be getting easier for you, right?
Yeah, no, the conversations do get easier because of more waters under the bridge, and we're closer to legalization, and all the things are happening on the regulatory front, legalization front, faster than we ever imagined. So that's a very good positive. On the flip side of that, there's more entrepreneurs, there's more fund managers, there's more competition in this space, but I feel like we have a pretty compelling offering as a fund manager, and also just based on our track record with the companies that have come through the program and found success.
And it's a great time, I think, to kind of shift the conversation just for a question. We're not a very political show, but I'd like to ask you, because you have your, nose to the grindstone, your ear to the ground in the industry, and I respect the opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion on Jeff Sessions exiting from the DEA, being fired or resigning, depending on what story you're watching or listening to. But what do you think that means for the cannabis space?
It's easy to celebrate when an official like Jeff Sessions resigns from the Department of Justice, right? He has been very clear on his positions related to cannabis reform and legalization, and we know he's not a fan. So it's easy to celebrate that. However, the devil is sometimes better than the devil you don't know, right? So with change comes, at that level comes a new, effort to understand their positions and how they'll interact with the cannabis industry. But I think if we look at Jeff Sessions, who has just left, and how he was very much against cannabis law reform and legalization, and he was not efficient or effective at effectuating any change in the laws, I think, he was okay in the final analysis, neutral. for us.
Yeah, I think that's a great point for how anti his stance was, how little change or how little actually happened from it. It was kind of like, you're walking your dog down the street and you hear a dog barking inside of a house and you turn and it's a little poodle and you're like, oh, that's a big bark, but nothing's going to happen. And that's kind of what I felt like from Jeff Sessions. And so I agree, man, it is crazy to see, because as bad as some people thought he was, it could easily get a lot worse, or it could get a lot better.
Right. The only constant is change. And, I'm not, and I don't think anybody should be unfurling the mission accomplished banner and celebrating quite yet. There's a long road ahead of us, but I feel like, our progress is not being impeded.
Very interesting. Now, I want to shift the context of the conversation back to Canopy Boulder and what you guys have done to this point, almost at the end of 2018, what you're doing in 2019. We've had a couple of companies that you've brought in this past year, Best and Grow, that's joined you guys. Could you give me a rundown of what's new in this past year at Canopy Boulder in terms of some of the companies you're working with?
Yeah. So we've made investments in, I believe, 17 different companies this year. And then we're looking at making more investments in those companies. So that's between now and the end of the year. We have some really strong teams in the cohort right now with just more MBAs, more law degrees. The quality of the entrepreneur is going up and up and up in the space. Next year, we're including hemp and CBD brands in our investment criteria. So we want to make sure that we're able to sort of capture some of that Boulder, Colorado natural products industry magic, the industry where I came from. I was in the natural and organic foods industry for 15 years before cannabis, and want to see hemp and CBD products. We expect to see those follow a similar trajectory, essentially naturally occurring functional foods. So we're going to be making some investments in that space, and that is part of our 2019 plan. So, we're going to wrap up the cohort here in January and take a little break and then get back on it for 2019.
Man, it's crazy that you mentioned that, because our last show, we interviewed Nick French, who is the founder and beekeeper at Colorado Hemp Honey. And it's a company that blends hemp, naturally grown Colorado organic hemp, with honey that they cultivate as well. He's a former U.S. Marine who now became a beekeeper. And it's crazy what they're doing, and their product's fantastic. And it's funny that you're looking at that sector, because it seems like hemp and CBD is almost going to be a more profitable sector than cannabis, or at least it could be.
It absolutely could be, and I think that it will be if the Farm Bill passes and there's a legalization component for hemp and CBD. Maybe it's just hemp, but that essentially will open up the floodgates of investment and interest from the conventional and mainstream markets, just like we've seen up in Canada, right? The federal legalization of a cannabis product has significant impacts on the economics and the financing landscape around these businesses. So we're definitely looking forward to being part of that.
So to those companies, which, by the way, CBD hemp companies you haven't had in your profile or portfolio before, are those companies hitting you up, or how is that happening? Because they don't necessarily know you're investing in them, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a new thing, and we got to educate the market. But, in Boulder, Colorado, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who have had experience in the natural and organic food space that understand what it takes to build a product, right? That tastes good, is convenient at a good price. And also move that through structured distribution and merchandising channels to retail, and then communicate to consumers about it. So, I think we've been approached by a lot of entrepreneurs, and we know a lot of entrepreneurs who are eyeing the space. They're just looking for a way in. And we've actually been working with a team here in the office. It was founded by a couple of friends of mine that I know from the natural foods industry, and they have CBD-infused snacks and beverages.
Very nice. Now, Canopy Boulder is not a public company as of now, right? All right. What are you thinking? Is that a plan in the future? Are you looking to do something like that?
I don't know. We've been approached, but, we want to be really mindful about distractions. And at the same time, as an investment company, an appropriate publicly traded entity. And I'm not sure about that, right? Because for a lot of reasons, but we're minority investors in a lot of companies. What do you report, right, to the market? And I think the companies that are doing well and will do well in the public space are those that can grow revenues and profits over time.
What are your thoughts, Ben, on the cannabis stock market? A lot of stocks up in Canada, some in the U.S. Is that something that you're interested in, or are you kind of staying away until it settles itself?
No, I think it's appropriate for anyone to invest in these public stocks. One, just to learn and to track what's going on. But what's been happening up there is companies with Canadian licensed producers or U.S. entities are working with investment banks to structure offerings, and then those offerings are being farmed out to the boiler room guys who are calling retail investors to bring in capital. So, the extent of due diligence is pretty low on those deals generally. You're not getting an institutional, sophisticated investor. You're getting someone who's looking to sort of time the market, which isn't, is a pretty common strategy. So, they're very, very high valuations. I don't know if those will stick or stand the test of time. That being said, the companies are raising the money, build up a war chest to execute. And I think over time, we're going to see, we're already seeing the transition from the publicly traded companies up there saying, okay, we're in cannabis, and that's great, to how are we doing from a revenue and profitability standpoint. So
we're talking with Patrick Rea, the co-founder and CEO of Canopy Boulder. You can learn more about them at canopyboulder.com. They're a business accelerator and investment fund for the legal cannabis industry. Of course, that's linked in the description of the podcast below. Just another minute or so with Patrick. A couple more questions for you, good buddy. Are there any companies you've accepted into your program in 2018 that you think are going to be big, game-changing companies?
Yeah, I think Best and Grow has the potential to be really big. They're a very strong team. They're very driven. They're very intelligent. They're action oriented, and they're curious, and they listen. Good advice. They've realized there is a acute problem they can solve that gives them credibility and relationships with brands and retailers and retail staff, loyalty that they can build up that will allow them to do even more and interesting different things. So I like Best and Grow. I also like Miele & Co., which is an events company. You go to the big trade shows in the cannabis industry, and they're mostly ancillary products and services companies, lighting, soil, technology companies exhibiting. And honestly, those are not the companies that have the most money for marketing, right? The companies that should have the most money for marketing are brands trying to reach retailers and retail staff. So, we've made a lot of investments. Arguably, Best and Grow and Miele are focused on that brand to retailer business exchange. And, Miele is planning a hosted buyer summit in January. And I think, that's going to be a great start for their business to help connect brands with buyers in a very efficient manner. So I'm pretty excited about those two. And then we've got the fall cohort. It's still early to tell, but we've got some companies with some very good prospects there as well.
It's interesting. You mentioned Miele. I'm working on getting a podcast lined up with them too. I want to learn more. I was interested. I got introduced to them, maybe about a month or so ago, and I'm definitely interested in wanting to learn more now. Back in, back in August of 2018, throw it all the way back 2 or 3 months, Canopy Boulder released their new podcast platform, Cannabis Business Podcast. What made y'all want to start a podcast, and what's the podcast about? What sort of information are you putting out there?
Yeah, no, it was sort of an easy way to download our experiences, information, and give access to the listeners to what's going on here. Frankly, like we talked about MJBiz Con and Las Vegas, I like to go and do a little bit of a download, a little review, and talk about, who was there, what were the themes, what were people talking about, what is this, who's this right for to attend and why, just trying to help people understand, what the event landscape looks like. But we also do interviews with our alumni and profile them because they have really interesting stories to tell. The winners and the heroes in this Canopy Boulder journey are the entrepreneurs, right? I mean, we're here to support them and help them be successful. They're on a journey, a hero's journey that is very exciting and interesting. And then we try to profile as many of the companies as possible to help other entrepreneurs understand what it's really like.
Again, it's the Cannabis Business Podcast brought to you by Canopy Boulder. I'm assuming you can find it just about anywhere you can find the podcast, and I'm sure it's on canopyboulder.com, so go ahead and check that out. Patrick, last question before we get you out of here, my good friend. What's on deck, Canopy Boulder in 2019? What are we looking for?
Well, we're looking to invest in slightly fewer companies, higher quality companies, and put more money into them to help them get more done. So we've changed our offering terms slightly to make it a bit more founder friendly and give them a little bit more capital sooner so they can find early traction. So, we're bringing up our initial offer, right, of investment and follow-on funding. But we feel like, this is 2019 is going to be a big year for the cannabis industry with, the Farm Bill and the changes that will come from that, as well as the capital continuing to flow down into the United States from Canadian companies. So, it's an exciting time, never a dull moment, and we, look forward to coming to work every day.
Man, it seems like since 2013, 2014, every year has been the same thing. It's exciting. It's going to grow, double, triple what it was. I don't know how you guys keep up with it. I don't.
Yeah, a lot of hard work. It's a lot of time. But it's great. There's nothing better than coming to work and being inspired, energized by everything. So, it's a fun one.
His name again, Patrick Rea, co-founder, CEO of Canopy Boulder. You can check out their site, canopyboulder.com. Patrick, where are people going to submit to Canopy Boulder for consideration?
Yeah, right from our homepage of our website, canopyboulder.com, there's a link to our application. So feel free to submit an application. We'll see it come through.
And again, if you want to learn more about that process and how to get accepted into the program and what they're looking for, go back to episode 53 of our podcast. We broke that down for you so you can go back, listen to that before you submit your application to make sure you're doing it right, to make sure that your application could catch the sparkle in Patrick's eye.
Yeah.
Patrick,
we welcome all.
Exciting stuff, man. Thanks for joining us. You're a media veteran and you get to speak all over for the cannabis space. So always an honor to have you on the show. And we look forward to getting you back on in 2019 when you guys have some more interesting, fun stuff to talk about. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for the honor of being on your show. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Anytime, buddy. That's going to do it for us on the show this afternoon. Thanks again for listening, whether it was on iTunes, SoundCloud, or StayRooted.com. Again, don't forget to check out Rooted TV on StayRooted.com or at CannabisClub.tv or in your local dispensary if they go or belong to Cannabis Club TV's distribution network. But that's going to do it for us on the podcast this afternoon. Big thanks to our sponsors over at Green Bros. Don't forget to hit them up at greenbros.com. My name has been Tim Stromboll, reminding you one more time to work hard, be humble, and stay rooted. We'll see you next week, everybody.